back to another big week of fun and excitement here on the Patrick Reagan Show. Some Black Crowes playing some Remedy as the lead-in music this week. This show is the remedy for an increasingly dysfunctional and illogical world. A world that is not respecting the rights of other human beings. Speaking of music, though, and on the lead-in there, people sometimes ask me why I play so much music on this show, and they'll tell me, hey, other shows don't let their music play for as long as I do. Well, to be blunt, this isn't one of those other shows. This is the Patrick Reagan Show. You won't hear another show like this one because there isn't another person like myself. Just as there isn't another you, there isn't another me. There might be someone who is a lot like you, but there's only one actual you. Well, it's the same thing with this show. You aren't going to hear hypocritical or emotional arguments. We don't say one thing when there's a Republican president and then do a 180 and say the opposite when there's a Democrat president. No, we're an equal opportunity show. We don't let anyone off the hook here. You threaten the freedom and liberty of individuals, be they inside this country or not, and we'll call you out on it. We're very consistent when it comes to principles here. That's what's made this show so successful. That's why this show is leaping up the ratings charts at such a rapid rate. It's the fresh air of freedom and liberty that welcomes everyone who listens. That's becoming such a rarity these days that when people find it, they're excited to become a part of it. That's the Patrick Reagan Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network, and we're also broadcasting locally here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I want to thank you again for listening this week. But before we get started with the national stuff, I want to cover something that what happened here locally, but it does reach out to the rest of the country. I'm sure if it's happening here, it's happening other places as well. Here in downtown Knoxville, we had a vigil this week consisting of about 25 people, a large percentage of them being clergy. Normally, I wouldn't even mention this because, I mean, come on, 25 people? There's more than that eating in a single restaurant downtown. What bugged me, though, and the reason I wanted to comment on some of the things that were said by these clergy people, they said some things, and I think they're being disingenuous. This vigil, to begin with, was conducted downtown to pray for the expansion of the federal Medicaid program. Now, yes, you heard that right. These people were reading Bible verses and praying for the expansion of a government program. The story ran in the local newspaper here, the Knoxville News Sentinel, and it quoted a couple of these ministers. One said, quote, "By our faith, we are called to care for the most vulnerable." And this was Jim Sessions, a local United Methodist minister. Another minister said, quote, "We're a group of people who allow our faith to influence what we support civically." That was Heather Godsey, also a local United Methodist minister. In explaining the gathering, she said, "This is the right thing to do, whether you are a person of faith or not." Now, during this approximately 15 to 20-minute program, the column in the newspaper says the Bible passage, Matthew 25:45, was read stating that what you did for the least of these, you did for me. Of course, they're using this passage to say that it's a good thing to expand this federal program. Now, among the other local clergy that were taking part formally were Valentino McNeil of the Mount Olive Baptist Church, Leroy Franklin of Mount Calvary Baptist, and Chris Bryce, I believe, of Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Okay, so Jim Sessions, Heather Godsey, Valentino McNeil, Leroy Franklin, and Chris, I believe, Bryce. I would invite any of you to explain why the forcing of one citizen to give money for the care of another is in any way a Christian thing to do. Now, I've not been to seminary, but I do know, quoting scripture, about caring for people who cannot care for themselves does not involve having the government do it. You do realize that, correct? You're not doing for the least of these, you did it for me. You guys aren't doing anything. You're demanding the government should force people to do this. The Bible mentions nothing about lobbying the Roman government to care for brothers and sisters. No, it says you do it. You high and holy ministers need to put aside your fancy robes and elegant titles and get your hands dirty. You are supposed to care for others, not solicit the government to do it. Oh, but you don't want that. You don't want to take any of your salary and spend it on someone else's medical bills. No, instead, you want to spend other people's money and pat yourselves on the back and talk about how you're all doing God's will. Since you people are so anxious to lecture the rest of us using scriptures, I guess you missed this one from a little bit before the one you used in Matthew 25. It's from Matthew 7:21 through 23, and I looked it up and I'll read it to you here. It says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" All of these clergy I just mentioned. And here are their names in case you forgot them. Jim Sessions, Heather Godsey, Valentino McNeil, Leroy Franklin, Chris Bryce, and any others that were attendants but weren't mentioned in the article. Since you guys were so interested in getting your names out there and getting them in the Sentinel, I thought I'd just mention them again. But all of you should apologize to your congregations and maybe even resign your positions. You have demonstrated that you know nothing of the true nature of Christian service to others. You think government is the answer. It's not. Nothing in the Bible states that government is the answer. It's not in there. Standing out there and quoting scripture to support theft flies in the face of what you should be teaching the people who attend your churches. This is why people get a bad taste in their mouths when they go to a lot of churches nowadays. They're full of hypocrites. Now, sure, they're full of sinners too. The Bible has nothing but compassion for sinners, though. But hypocrites are derided throughout that book, and no tolerance is shown for them. But hey, this isn't Sunday school, and this isn't a religious show. But if there's one thing I absolutely hate, it's a hypocrite. I can't stand them in government. I can't stand them in business. And I can't stand them in my personal life. When I read about hypocrites in the news, I want to be sure and point them out so you won't be fooled. And if you attend any of these people's churches I just mentioned, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I would seriously reconsider where I spend my Sunday mornings and put my offering money. All right, we are up on the first break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Now that I have that off my chest, we can move on to some national and international stuff. We have a lot of it, and we'll get started right after these important messages from the sponsors of the show.